All right, okay, folks, welcome to episode 10 of The English Way. This afternoon, I have the pleasure of talking to the wonderful Wendy Lynn Myers. Now, this is a little bit of a departure from what I normally do. Normally, I stick very much to English politics, but I want to delve into the world of health, because health is wealth. And if we're going to get through the next few years, then we all need our health. And I had a fascinating conversation with Wendy about 2 or 3 weeks ago that had quite profound ramifications. So I thought I'd get her on and quiz her, probe her more deeply to see what else is in there. So yes, if you want to give everybody who doesn't know about you, Wendy, if you want to give them a little bit of a background to yourself.
Well, I am a mom of 3 kids, and I was a teacher, then I was a coach, then a teacher, then I homeschooled my girls, and now I get the pleasure and luxury of coaching people through fitness, nutrition, and now their trauma, which has been a game changer for me, and then as well. So yeah.
What did you teach?
I taught, first I taught kindergarten, then I taught high school English and literature.
Oh, all
In the
right.
middle of that, I homeschooled my own girls.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to homeschool when you were a teacher at a school?
Great question. Because I saw how crappy the school system was. I was a private school teacher first. So by the time I had 3 kids, we got paid less than minimum wage. So to go back to teaching while I had kids would be to send my kids to daycare, pay for that. And I wouldn't make as much money as a teacher as I would have to pay for daycare. And I was like, this is stupid. I'm just going to raise my kids. And then I was in Texas when my oldest would have been in kindergarten, and gotta love American politics. But I was literally a stone's throw from the school, paying taxes for it, and everybody around me was illegal, and the school was 100% Spanish speaking. My girls would have been the only white girls who didn't speak Spanish at that school that I was paying for. Gotta love it. So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, we have a similar thing going on here. So
I decided to homeschool.
it's a bit crazy. I don't think anybody really thinks of Texas being Spanish. We kind of see Texas as the last holdout,
Right.
you know?
Right.
It's kind of like, it's that thing of when Florida kind of got involved about 6 years ago, and the Texans were like, well, it's great, you know, but we've been here since the Alamo, you know? So it's kind of like, it is the last. I've had in my mind the idea to write a song loosely based around the theme of the end of the world. There's this huge bar fight at the end of the world, and you want to be in Texas with the Texans when that happens.
That's true. There are some amazing Texans. Yes, I just didn't live by them at this point. But I will say, my neighbors were amazing. I would actually teach them. I taught their kids English, and they gave me amazing fajita meat. The sweetest people in the world. Absolutely the sweetest people. So.
Yeah. I think it's about preservation of cultures, though, isn't it? It's like you have to have, even the Roman Empire understood that you need a monoculture. You can be a melting pot, but there has to be one system and one way, which I think is where, although it's eventually kind of got to a difficult point in the States, where America succeeded and Europe's failed.
Mm.
The American culture is a culture of meritocracy and success, and it's very much a kind of an Anglo culture with a little bit of room for add-ons.
I like that.
Whereas what they've kind of tried to do in Europe is kind of destroy the traditional cultures and just create this Marxist soup of nonsense, which kind of doesn't. Yeah, it's terrible.
I think America's following suit lately.
Well, I think it's all about a change on January 20th. I can't wait for that. The world's going to go mad next year. Well, if you think about it, it went mad over the last 4 years. He's going to undo the lot. It'll be like reversing back through everything. It's going to go wild.
I hope.
But it'll be 4 years worth of decompression in like 9 months.
I hope so. Yeah.
So it's going to be crazy. But so how I came to find you, I would describe you as essentially a health and nutritionalist coach. Is that fair?
It's fair. Yeah. I just like to set myself apart in the sense.
And
yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that bit. So what made me go, this woman's different, was you put something out about cortisol and
Yeah.
the effect that cortisol stress and trauma has on the digestion. Now, these are like lesser known furrows of health. So to give a quick background how I got it, I was vaccine injured as a kid. I had two things combined at once. One of them was a tetanus vaccine and what we call the BCG vaccine in England, which is measles, mumps, rubella, and something else. And they basically got lodged in the pineal gland, which it took nearly 2 decades to find this out. But it just began an onset of issues from about 13 or 14 years of age, which has essentially resulted in me having quite a burnt out nervous system. And then you get all the problems that result from that. And you get metabolic syndromes like insulin resistance. And anyone who's ever tried to lose weight who has severe insulin resistance, it defies calories in, calories out. And I know that because I used to train. So I had medically prescribed weight training from the age of 14. By the time I was 16, 17 years old, I had legs like that, which I think is the reason why I was very, very difficult to knock out in fights. I understand how, I almost became a sports scientist. I understand how that kind of functions and how that works. And then just through my 30s, things began, in my mid-20s, everything began to escalate and I had to basically lay off training. I needed like 9 or 10 days recovery between sessions. And that's when I went to the doctors. This is about 2002, 3, and they said, you've got ME, which is like an autoimmune condition. And then I basically stopped going back after that because they were useless. And I went private, went to an excellent private doctor who kind of dug out the vaccine issue. That took a number of years because you have layers upon layers that build up, right?
Right.
And that took a number of years to kind of dig back through that because you have to start, okay, well, what is your immediate issue? And then you're going down into the deeper layers. And then I think what she couldn't do, meditation basically did a lot of the rest. I meditated for a long time. But in my 30s, I ended up with insomnia, and then I went into it like almost a decade. I still have insomnia. And you go around in cycles on that. And I think when we spoke, I was saying that no matter, I worked in the building trade. I was literally doing intense physical exercise all day, every day on 2,000 calories or less a day. And my weight just kept going up and up and up, but my muscle mass was going down and down. And one of the things I don't think people realize when you have excess cortisol is cortisol grows because it feeds on your muscle. It eats your muscle. And yeah, you'd hit on some things. Now, I love people like Greg Doucette and all of these guys. I do, but where I know they fall down is when they're insistent that it is purely calories in for calories out. And I think it is if your immune system functions normally. But I think if you have anything lurking in there, then there is more to it. Now, I thought it was purely a health issue until I started taking pituitrophin, which is essentially the secretion from a bull's pituitary gland. So it stimulates your own pituitary gland into a health reaction. So where you have injuries in your body, it creates a response where it tries to heal whatever the injury is. So you would have, if you injured your shoulder 30 years ago, it would hurt for a day and then it'll be fine. And then honestly, it's really bizarre, but you have to over nutrition yourself because it mines your nutrients for healing. So you end up completely depleted of B vitamins, completely depleted of micronutrients. You have to really eat over nutrition your diet to cope with it. But as it was repairing things, I was remembering things that I'd completely forgotten, right? And that's when I thought, hang on, my life wasn't what I thought it was. My life was a bit harder and a bit tougher than what I seem to remember. And that's when somebody pointed me in the direction of trauma, right? And trauma therapy. So, and I'm going to make a distinction here. What I'm talking about here is CPTSD,
yes,
which is not PTSD. PTSD, to make the distinction, PTSD is horrific. It's generally a singular or a number of singular events, like being in a war or witnessing a murder or having some sort of vicious attack that kind of when the memory resurfaces, the body goes into one of the four fight or flight, freeze, or fawn responses. CPTSD is different. It's like a low level or even a high level, consistent amount of trauma over months. This is how I understand it, months or years, that changes not only the brain development, but the personality. So they alters in response to this consistent, like water washing over a stone consistently changes the shape of the stone. And this is what at that level of consistent kind of difficulty and trauma does, particularly if you're a child. So that's where I was kind of coming at it from, and I amassed all of this information together with everything that I already knew about diet and exercise, and thought there's something, in order to heal this system with the nervous system, it's much deeper, and I have to go deeper. And I think in my head, I was looking for somebody who had some understanding of how the nervous system is affects the digestion. But if you don't go all the way through the cycle and heal everything, you're never going to heal the thing that's at the root. And you were the first person I ever come across who understood that.
It's just now kind of coming into mainstream. I think about 8-9 years ago, it was, if you were a therapist or a coach and you dealt with some sort of trauma in general, it was starting to come into that area. But as far as Instagram, social media, things like that, it takes coaches like myself who are like, okay, we're going to understand that and branch out. But a fitness nutrition coach doesn't want to hear about trauma, because they want it to all be about, no, you're not eating enough, or you're eating too much, or you're not eating enough of the right things. They want to make it very simple. They want to make it where they can look at you and say, oh, you need to up your calories in order to gain muscle, or you need to lower your calories. You're not moving enough. And the thing that really got me upset and why, well, one of the reasons why I got into this was because I continued to see women be berated by male coaches and continually told, you're eating too much. You're just not calculating everything. You're not writing down everything, or you're not tracking everything correctly. And I'm like, there is an extent to that. There really is. There are a lot of people that don't add every bite or taste or something, and that can add up. And when your caloric deficit as a female is only 300 calories a day, you can overeat that super easily. But it was just consistent. And I kept getting clients where my clients, I actually have to increase their calories. And I was like, something's not right here. How come all these women are starving themselves? All these women are saying, I'm 40 and I'm starving myself. I'm eating 900 calories. And all a male coach wants to tell these women is, you're really not. You're really eating 2,000 calories. You're just lying to yourself. But these women were wasting away. They had no energy. Their mental health was suffering like crazy, because when we don't eat enough, our mental health goes down. And all these men wanted to throw at them was, stop it. You're whining and complaining. You just need to stop eating. And I was like, I'm done with this. I'm sick of this. There's another reason. And there was. So, yeah.
How did you... This isn't common. Like I know from my journey into this isn't common knowledge. How did you find this?
Well, trigger warning before I say this for any female who has been raped. But in 2022, I was raped, and like any good Gen Xer, I shoved it under the rug and ignored it and moved on. And it had only been 2 years before that I realized my whole life was sort of a lie, and I had been emotionally, mentally, psychologically, religiously abused my whole life. When that's all you know, that's all you know. So I sort of went into how do I fix this? How do I make my life real? And got myself in a situation where that happened. And sort of about 2 weeks after, I was like, Wendy, other people have tried to destroy you your whole life. You didn't let them. Why are you going to let this guy? So shoved it under the rug and just forgot about it. Except that we know that the body keeps a score, right? And the body doesn't get it. So about 9 months later, I was triggered by actually a friend. Didn't understand triggers at that time, but dealt with it by talking to a coworker. And I said, I don't understand, because what happened was I was triggered and I gained 5 pounds overnight. And as a nutritionist and a personal trainer, I know that's impossible. And so I was doing research and I was looking for coaches and I was like, this is insane. I know what I would tell myself. I'm not going to pay $1,500 for a month of coaching just to be told I'm not eating enough or I'm eating too much. And so I was like, there's got to be a different solution. There has to be. And I started researching and found trauma. And so I was talking to my friend at work one day and I said, it can't be trauma though, because trauma is for military and victims. And she looks at me and she's like, Wendy, that's you. I had just shoved it so far under the rug, much like your life, where we cope with things by disassociating from them. And it was then that I was like, okay, this is crazy. And COVID had already happened and people had already been, dealing with a lot of stuff. And I was seeing some similar patterns in my behavior and thinking as I was around me. I was like, okay, trauma is seriously more than just military or victims. It has to be. And so I decided to look out and find a coach. They wanted $25,000. And I was like, well, I don't have that right now. So let's see what I can do. So I found a certification so that I could learn for the same price. And I was like, okay, this is an investment worth making. I will make this because I will heal and then I will have the skills to help my clients. And that has been the game changer because after COVID, I would say 90% of the population is dealing with serious trauma because I believe COVID and the pandemic was that last straw. We all have a threshold of what we can take and we're strong. But when all of those different traumas came in and hit everybody and landed in so many different ways, it was that last straw in so many people. And so we're seeing a society now that's shut down and completely endorsal and doesn't know how to understand their feelings because we've been telling them for so long. As men, you're not a man if you have feelings. You're not a man if you cry. You're not masculine. You shouldn't be talking like that. And as a female, if you have feelings, you're a drama queen. You're too much. You're too emotional. So we have literally taken feelings out of daily life and society. And that is the number one thing of regulating our hormones, regulating our nervous system. And actually all these chronic diseases, chronic illnesses, chronic pain are literally because of trauma in our body. And because we are not processing our feelings. Feelings are energy. Energy stays stored in your body. And as it continues to store and get suppressed and compound, we have illnesses. And that's what most of society is dealing with.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with that. I think the English have a reputation of being very stoic, the stiff upper lip, which I think is actually quite a good thing. I was talking to a gentleman, Nick Buckley, the other day. He's quite a remarkable man. And he basically said, as an Englishman, you have a duty not to cry in front of anybody. And I understand that completely. And I totally agree. He says, if you need to go and cry, you go in a room and you cry and you get it out your system and you go in and then you be there for everyone else. I understand that. And I actually agree with that. I think that's right. Because there's something in the English character that demands that. But I think there is a difference. What I've learned is there is a difference between bottling things up and letting things go.
Yes.
And I think I bottled everything up for like my entire life. And then the only way I can describe it is it's like you get to a point where the nervous system just goes, nope, too much. That's too much. I can't deal with any more. And it's like, whoa, okay, that's interesting. And then you find that it's all still there. Nothing has been dealt with. You haven't dealt with it. You haven't processed it. So because you haven't processed it, you haven't developed a response either. So that's where you get personality holes. Because you haven't, the development isn't there properly because all you've done is put it on the back. You're carrying another one, but you're never learning to go, well, hang on, what is this? Oh, it's this, and then putting it down. And, if you watch, I have this I'll twitch my head because I've got severe hypertension, right? Now, the hypertension, I can feel it about here. And then occasionally it gets all the way down. When it gets down to here, and this is something else you made the connection with, it twitches something in the stomach.
Vagus nerve, yeah.
So it's obviously connected to now I was aware that, hang on, when it gets down to here, I get this weird sensation here. But I'd never connected that to digestion until you said it.
Yeah, so that's the vagus nerve. And we have a vagus nerve that's gut and goes all the way up and connects with everything. 80% of the sensations, thoughts, feelings that we have come from our gut. Only 20% start in our brain. So actually our gut is more of a brain than our brain is.
Yeah, it's like 80% of your immune system's in your stomach as well, isn't it?
It is.
All right, so let's start with, we know that people are overly stressed. And I think, in England, we're kind of looking at where you were with Biden in 2020, and a lot of men are going, well, hang on, we actually have probably a slightly more hostile situation. So a lot of men are saying, right, we need to get fit. My experience is that I burn out after 3 weeks. The immune system can only take so much, and I don't need I don't have a lot of caffeine after, say, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I meditate. I do a lot I can to kind of bring that down. So, people are burning out. It's then, particularly when you get to your 30s, 40s, and 50s, leads to severe health problems. Like, a lot of people don't realize the middle-age spread is cortisol. The distension of the stomach is your liver. As you get older and the stomach comes out like this, that's the liver. Well, it depends where it is. It's either diabetic, pre-insulin, or it's the liver. So if we're going to start unpacking and saying, right, we could identify problems, we know the problems are there. What is the beginning of, if you and I were going to have this conversation now, what is the beginning of us saying, right, let's unpack this and what we need to address to give everybody a foundation to go forward without people not wanting to come and hire your services?
I think it's going to be threefold. I mean, that's what I teach is mind, body, and soul. And those are the 3 pillars of a healthy life, because you can focus. I mean, I know but other people won't know. I did stage I did bodybuilding for 9 shows. And I can tell you that everybody on stage looked like Greek statues, but we were the unhealthiest. And I never did drugs, so I was a little bit different because the people doing drugs were very unhealthy. But even myself, who was all natural, still unhealthy. Yes, looked amazing.
By drugs, you mean anabolics, don't you? Train and plan.
Yeah. So that's when I realized, okay, health is more than just what you look like and how you move. And then that's also, before that was when I found out about my trauma and my abuse. And I was like, mentally, again, not healthy. My blood work was horrible. That's how I found out about the whole abuse, was the doctor took the time to ask questions when my blood work changed. So we have to understand that being healthy is physical, mental, and spiritual. And when we start to understand that, then we can start to address all of the issues, because it's not just about the food we put in our body. It's not just about how we move or don't move. It's not just about what we're doing with our spiritual or our soul. And that's not necessarily religion. That's more like meditation, knowing ourselves, being honest with ourselves, more of the nervous system kind of thing. So threefold. Now, food in the UK is very different from America. It's horrible in America. I think there's like 500 different chemicals and synthetic made dyes and stuff that is in American food that's not in any other country. That's a leading cause in America for a lot of the problems. But it's not the only one, because that only addresses the, what we're putting in our stomachs. But since we know that our gut, with our vagus nerve and our biosphere in the gut, is such a big part of our mental wellness, we do know that food plays a huge role. So we want to start with whole foods. I mean, I tell people that no food is off limits. But once they start to get on more whole foods, they start to see what it feels like to feel alive. I think so many people are just numbed because the food is so bad and they just keep eating it and it doesn't give their body energy. In fact, a lot of foods in America actually take nutrients from our body to digest it. Because there's such a lack of nutrients in the food itself, it steals nutrients from our bones in order to process it through your body. So people that start to eat real whole food start to feel like, within a month, my clients are like, oh my gosh, I feel alive. I feel like I have energy. And when we give people energy, they then have the energy to do the things that we ask them to do to be healthy, which is move. Right? If you have no energy and you feel dead and you feel numb, the last thing you want to do is go take a walk or go to the gym. But if all of a sudden you're getting food that gives you energy. You now have the energy to move. And starting by taking a walk. I never start with the gym. I always start with, hey, let's go take a walk. Because the walk helps our mental health. We get out, we stop overthinking, we see nature, we feel fresh air, we have the breeze hit our skin, sunlight hits our skin. So many things happen when you take a walk. Your digestion improves. So then they start to feel good. And then they have the energy to what? To make better choices. So they start to plan their meals instead of, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. I'm going to go to the store and buy anything and buy the first thing I see. So they all cycle. The more you eat well, the more energy you have to do the movement, to make the right choices. And then we recover. We sleep. We sleep well. And people don't understand that sleep is huge. We don't talk about that because I know America, I don't know if I'm England, but America we pride ourselves on, oh my gosh, I only got 3 hours of sleep. I mean, you look at all these CEOs and they're the whole 5 o'clock a.m. club. I got up at 5 a.m., so I'm, a CEO. What? How about sleep till 6 or 7, or go to bed earlier? But 7 to 9 hours is what most people that know anything about sleep will tell you. I say 6 to 8 because I've been a person who has lived on 6 hours of sleep my entire life. 4 hours when I was raising kids because I didn't have a choice. But 6 hours really helps me. If I have a leg day, I do 8. So I average about 7.5 hours of sleep. But when we recover, which is what our sleep is, then again, we have the energy to digest our food. Then we have the energy to move. And all of this spirals into each other because if we move and go outside and have a walk and get sunlight, then we actually sleep better and recover better. And that goes into even what we eat, because if we eat 3 hours or if we eat an hour before bed and we say we got 6 hours of sleep, we actually did not, because it takes 3 hours for your body to digest food. And that's what a lot of people have happen is they eat right before bed and then they go to sleep. And the first couple hours of sleep is not really sleep. It's digestion. So then you wake up groggy and tired and you're like, but I got 6 hours of sleep. Well, no, you probably only got 3. So recovery is huge, which is why I teach recovery is also rest days or just giving yourself a mental break or giving yourself grace. We don't, as a society, we don't give ourselves grace. We push. We're our worst enemy and we just don't give ourselves compassion. That was a lot. Sorry.
No. Hey, look, I think one of the things that caught me was the fact that the first time we spoke, you just this 15-minute, and it was glorious. It was amazing. It was fantastic to watch. You glowed. That's it. All right. So self-compassion, that's an interesting thing. So this gets back to something you said to me. Now, quick point that the Buddhists say that you can't reach nirvana if you're not compassionate towards yourself. And that could be stopping somebody from destroying your neighborhood. It could be, there's a variety of layers to that. Now, you said something to me, and somebody echoed this about a week after. It was something along the lines of you need to give yourself kindness. And I was like, what are you on about? What are you talking about? And then I was sat in a pub with somebody in London, and she just said, if you were going to make a list of all of the things in your life that you loved, where would you come on that list, David? And I just went, what? What are you on about? And I thought, I have no concept for what you just said.
Yeah.
And I asked my wife. My wife went, what? Like, I don't understand that. And I don't know whether that's an English thing.
Oh, no, it's a world thing.
Oh, and I just thought,
religion thing. I think it's religion.
Because in your head, you go, well, that's selfish.
Yep, exactly.
But then how do you, but then there's the other thing of where I'll say to my wife, you need to put yourself top of the list. And she'll go, no, the kids need to be top of the list. And I said, no, because if you die, the kids suffer. So you have to be top. And it's this thing of like, how do you, because I think it's different for men than it is for women. And I think the issue I have with a lot of therapy is it's very estrogenic. And I think a lot of therapy has an estrogenic effect on men. If they dig into their feelings too much, it's not good. I think men are better off being given an instruction manual and going, there's the engine, this is the problem. And then they can go away and fix it, right? That's what they need, this is the carburetor, it goes in there, go and give it a hammer. And it works. For blokes, it works. Once they know, yeah, there's a problem there. If they go out and chop some wood or lift something, they kind of sort it out. But it's like there needs to be a process of, well, this is how you need to understand it. So this thing of like, well, what is being kind to yourself without becoming a new age away with the fairies, which is what a lot of it is,
Yes. That's a really good question. And I talk a lot about that because it's the number one game changer for our metabolic health. It's also it's the game changer that changed me because I was in a very, a bad marriage. Well, we're friends now, but I was in a marriage that just was not, it was neglectful, abusive. And I had to love myself enough to get out of that. And that's hard because especially as a parent, like your wife says, no, the kids come first. And the kids always came first. So let me back up a little bit. Self-love is, I just did a whole 30-day series on self-love. And the people who took it were like, this is life-changing. And I'm glad because that's what I believe. When we start to love ourselves, we change not only ourselves, but our society. Because we have the society we have right now because people don't love themselves. We think they do. They buy things, they do things, they go on trips, they post it on social media, and they're like, oh, I'm happy. This is great. Follow my life. And then if we don't have that, we're like, oh, we're less than. When in reality, all those people that have money and stuff, not all, a lot of them don't love themselves. They're doing exactly, sorry, let me turn my phone off. They're doing exactly what parents do that are, say, divorced and trying to show their kids love. They buy it. So what are people doing in society? They're buying their self-love. But until we can validate ourselves, we have no right to ask society to validate us. And I think this was the game changer for me because I was that perfect mom. I was super mom. People would come up to me and be like, can you raise my kids for me, please? Because my kids were just amazing because I spent all of my time with them. I say that I should have had 10 because 3 was too easy for me, right? And I homeschooled and I did it by myself. And it's just, they were my life. I had no life. Literally, I had no life other than my kids. And I thought that was exactly how I was supposed to do things. And then I found out about my abuse and my trauma. And I was like, what do I want to do? My life's been a lie. I love my kids, but what do I want to do? And I was like, I want to bodybuild. I'd always wanted to bodybuild, being an athlete my whole life. But my ex, who wasn't my ex at the time, early on had said, no, you'll look manly, you'll look masculine, you'll look,
No.
Everybody says, it's what everybody.
I just stop you right there. I've never seen a physique that has so much muscle, but still retains its natural shape.
Yeah, well,
it's insane. It's absolutely insane. It's just, there's not an inch left, but there's not veins popping everywhere. It's not aggressive. You don't look gaunt. You don't look super skinny. You look completely feminine and normal, but you're absolutely jacked.
Because I do it without drugs. I think that's the biggest thing I get all the time. People are like, you don't look jacked. And I'm like, that's because I'm natural. We don't understand because it's never told that 99.9% of the women that are on fitness magazines or something are jacked. And I'm talking even the bikini girls.
Yes.
They're some of the biggest drug abusers out there. And drugs change a woman. They change us. They change us into more of a masculine.
They all start talking.
They start talking like that, or they lose too much fat in the right, wrong place. And so, I'm natural. And I think it's just so rare. I mean, I went up against, I was like the only person on stage that was natural. Most shows. He was completely different. So back to self-love. So when I started to love myself and work out and bodybuild, it was a rough transition because I had to spend 2 hours in the gym. And until then, I had just worked out at home with dumbbells and creating my own hip movements and things like that. And I would get interrupted and yada, yada. When I started loving myself enough to give myself those 2 hours at the gym, my girls actually learned to love themselves and they learned to solve things on their own. They learned to handle things that mom would normally solve. And it was rough because it was guilt for probably 6 months. We as women carry guilt, men carry shame. And there was so much guilt. And it was very tough. But for the first time in my life, I understood love yourself first in order to love others. They tell you on the airport or in the airplane, put your mask on first. And I remember I would fly with all three of my girls alone. And I'm like, no way, I'm putting it on my girls first. Are you kidding me? And I believe, this is my own opinion, I believe it comes from religion. Religion and government constantly tell us to love others, and it's shameful to love yourself, especially as women. We are to be self-sacrificing and servants, because if the church gave us the right as human beings to love ourselves, they know that it's when we will fully become alive, and they will not be able to control us anymore. Same with the government. You can't control people who love themselves. You can control people who don't love themselves, because you can control them with fear of not being enough all the time. But when you feel enough in your own soul, and you know that you are a radiant, shining light, and that you are good enough as you are, you change the world. And it was amazing to see how I had been struggling with my daughters before, and the relationship and respect. And then when I started to respect myself and put myself first, they started to respect me, because they didn't see me as a doormat anymore. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. And they were seeing me as a doormat because I was just always there for them and always available to abuse. But once I started putting myself and loving myself, it's been amazing. And it's been a real roller coaster, because for the last 3 years, I've had to sort of teach my girls to love themselves too, because we can say what we want, but what we do models it most to our kids. And I had 3 girls, and they started to be these girls that were sacrificing for other people. And I was watching them, and I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, but Mom, you always. I was like, oh, crap. I modeled for you to die on every hill for everybody else except for your own. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things there. I think the self-sacrifice is a misinterpretation. I think it's a misunderstanding. I don't think it meant to completely leave yourself in a downtrodden position. It was supposed to, it comes from a place of your cup is full.
Yes.
And you will, whatever you give will be replenished. It's a spiritual understanding. And I think, you have to remember, even to, the atheist, Christ was a pretty enlightened individual, right? Well, how many of us have achieved his level of wisdom? So we're not going to understand his words properly either. So there's that. And I have the same issue with, I had too much put on me as a kid, but I recognize that you have to give children responsibility, because you're fashioning them to then move into the world and hold responsibility. And if we had more people who were decent in positions of responsibility, the world wouldn't be in the position it's in. And I have this conversation with my wife all the time, and I'll leave jobs for the children to actually do, and my wife will go and do them. And I'm leaving them because I don't want her to do them because she's overburdened, right? And I'll say, but you're robbing them of an opportunity of growth. Let them do it. It's not difficult. I'm not asking them to do what I had to do as a kid, but they have to go out and do these things. Small jobs, your job's to empty the bin, your job's to take the, you chop the kindling, I'll chop the wood, you chop the kindling. You divvy things out so that they have responsibility. And I'll be, oh no, but they've been to school all day. I was like, yeah, they went to school for 6 hours. You've worked for 9. Let them do something. You take half an hour,
Love
go and
that
have a
you
coffee, put your
support her
feet
in
up.
that. I love that.
She doesn't listen. She still doesn't.
I had the opposite. I tried to get my kids to do things. I knew that teaching them responsibility was huge. And when they didn't do it, they would get in a fight with me, because they knew that Daddy would come along and save them and be like, they don't have to do this. And I'm like, what are you? So then I have to do this again? So I got thrown under the bus, and I became the bad guy, and I had to do it then if I wanted a clean house. And they learned that they could just manipulate their way out of it. So the kids learn 2 things. They learn the negative aspect of how to put you in that position. So if you're like that, the kids learn how to manipulate people. So they learn a very Machiavellian trait, but they will also mirror that as they get older. Like, this is the other thing. I remember talking to a neuroscientist, and she was saying, even if you've got behavioral issues,
even if you keep them completely silent and hidden from your children, they will pick up on them and mirror them. Even though you don't know and they never see it. Like if you're an addict and it's hidden, they will mirror your addiction when they get older, because there's something about that sphere of electromagnetism that the brain operates in that the child naturally absorbs from you. So it's like you have to kind of put your house in order. You have to sort these things out. And it's weird because it's like, as far as I can tell, Gen X is the first generation to really take that seriously.
Yeah, I think we were all raised with the whole no parents and everything.
Feral.
Yeah, very. And nobody cared about us. And so then we raised these kids and, you know, you have the two spectrums. You have kids like my kids that were very well taken care of by loving parents. And then you have the kids that were just like, I wasn't loved, so neither are you. And you're like, wow, because of the trauma. You know, we both have different coping mechanisms, both sides. There's not a better or worse when you deal with trauma. We have coping mechanisms and they fill the gamut of the spectrum. And we have to understand them as that, coping mechanisms. Because our nervous system will do whatever it needs to keep us safe in the moment. And so then those become part of our personality. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think my entire personality is a coping mechanism.
It probably is.
Well, I think that's why I gravitated towards music and television.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a form of escape, isn't it? It's a disassociation.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I think when you go, oh my God, my whole life's a lie. It's a very kind of sobering thought, you know. And then out of that, you go, well, what is the reality within that then? What is there within that I can keep, you know?
Yeah, there is a reality. I think that's when I teach people how to become present. That was probably the best. It's funny that it's called present, and I say it's the best gift you can ever get, is to learn how to be present. Because I constantly use the example that I have 100,000 photos of my children. I was there for every moment of their lives. I never had a date. You know, my husband and I weren't really, I'd never left them. I didn't work. You know, I homeschooled them. So until they were, you know, teenagers, I didn't go back to teaching. So I was there the whole time. I didn't miss anything. I did tea parties with them. I didn't take time for myself. There wasn't baths. There wasn't shopping, nothing. I was there. But I look back at some of those pictures and I don't remember it.
You're disassociated.
Yes, I was constantly thinking of the next thing to do for them, the next thing to make them smile. My whole job as a mom was, I can't allow them to have the childhood I had. I can't. I need them to smile. I need them to be happy. I need to know I did a good job and wasn't my mom. And so I constantly found the next thing, but I was never present. And when I started to learn how to be present in life, holy cow, it changes everything. And I think that's the biggest thing we can do for self-love too.
I'd agree. I think I've spent pretty much I think I've been disassociated my entire life until about the last 12 months. In varying degrees, from being either a little bit to a lot. I mean, I went to see the Smashing Pumpkins in 95, 96, 95 on the Melancholy tour, right?
Oh, fun.
It was good, yeah. But I spent the whole concert viewed from up here. I completely disassociated. And my memory of that is a memory of being behind myself and watching it from a different viewpoint because I disassociated. And I have a lot of things like that where I would just check out. It's weird, and it was it would be a habit. And sometimes out of that, there would just be insane creativity would come. So it wasn't all negative, right?
Right.
It was like meeting the muses. But you realize, well, what have I actually been? What have I been present for? What have I been engaged for? But then I think within that, there lies, go back to the point I made earlier, there lies a part of your development that is undeveloped. And it's like at some point you have to go back and fix those things because, you know, you've missed too many end-of-level baddies, right? Yeah. You have to go back and tackle them.
Yeah. No, you're right on. I think, I mean, a lot of people are numbing themselves with food, alcohol, shopping, gambling, drugs, you name it. It doesn't matter what it is. If we use it to numb out, it's an addiction so that we can disassociate from the world. And again, you take that back to the root cause. And as children, if we had a chaotic environment, I mean, Gabor Mate says he has a whole new book about, well, maybe, yeah, book about how ADD, ADHD is all about trauma. Because when a child is in a chaotic environment, what do? They dissociate. They pull back, they numb, they find something else to focus on. They can't focus on what's in front of them because it's chaotic. So that's what we've got, a society of kids that are being labeled ADD, ADHD, because they've literally got a childhood or a life at the moment that they have to constantly disassociate from. It's chaotic. We don't have, and I think that goes back to your original thing of we don't have feelings. We don't see our feelings. We don't process our feelings. And I love how you said that it has to be for a guy, a manual to do and then move on. Because I give my guys that exact thing. I give them a feeling wheel and I'm like, put this on your phone. And when you have a feeling, go to the feeling wheel and dissect it till you get, use your analytical brain as a man and dissect that feeling to where it goes and then release it. And at the beginning, it can take 5 minutes. But once you get good at it, it can take 30 seconds. And then you've released it and you're done and you can move on. But we're so good at, I don't have time for this. I can't deal with this now. And we just suppress it. And then when we suppress things, we disassociate from things and we numb out because we are scared to deal with the feelings or the emotions, which is crazy because the entire reason we're here, the entire human experience is feelings. I mean, that's what marketing anything is based on, feelings, right? You see a commercial of any sort, they're tugging on your feelings. But yet at the same time, they want to throw out that men and women shouldn't have feelings. But then they're tugging on them with everything they try and sell you. Feelings is the human experience. And yet so many of us are denying it. And until we become one with our feelings and really embrace them, we're literally missing out on life. And then that's how you become present, by understanding and becoming part of your feelings. And I like to tell my clients there's no good and bad feelings because there isn't. They're just feelings. Society likes to label them as good or bad. And that's why we disassociate and numb out from feeling grief or feeling sadness or anger. But really, those aren't bad feelings. They're just feelings. And as soon as we understand where they're coming from and we can release that energy, we can move on. And that's the goal of humanity, I think, is to embrace our feelings, feel them, process them, release them, and move on.
Well, it's funny, like if you look at path of enlightenment, whether it's in Christian or Buddhist, the whole point is to move on, to let go of the feeling so that it has less purchase over you. And it's that purification where you're rising up and they're having less and less purchase, but you don't end up without any feeling. You end up with this massive compassion. That's what takes over when you release all of these negative things. And even feelings that we consider positive, if you examine them carefully, there's a negative to them. Once they all start to go away and you're in the ability of just letting things pass and letting them go, not taking them seriously, this compassion kind of comes out where you genuinely want to help people. And it's a different state. So I completely agree. If you go back for a minute, the body keeps the score.
Amazing.
Now, I think this is really true.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you look into the studies, what was the Japanese guy? Wasn't Yamamoto, Japanese doctor who did this study with water and memory.
Yes.
So water can hold memory. They know that water is a better transmitter of memory than any electronic device we have invented. They can transmit water information through pools of water with diodes, one at one end, one at the other, and they just pass the information through. So the body is this excellent communicator of information, but it's also this enormous source of memory. When you go through difficult times in life, if you haven't processed them properly, your body holds that. And whatever is going on at the time, you'll find it will latch. For me, the way I can describe it is it latches to the nearest injury. And the process of rehabilitating the injury is actually also a process of reliving the trauma.
And letting go.
And it's like you have to face it. You can't not face these things. How does that unresolved trauma affect the stress on the body and the health of the...
Metabolically, it's why there's studies that show that only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. That's scary. But that's exactly what is going on with our society, is that we have all these unprocessed feelings, and it's energy. Like we've talked, everything in the world is energy. And all those suppressed feelings are just atoms running around in your body. And until we can process them and release them, they're running around and they're causing damage because they're not supposed to be there. And so, I mean, you said it so well. And Body Keeps the Score, that book was mind-boggling because it just proved so many things. And that's why I think that book has started this entire movement, because he brought things to light that nobody had thought about before. There was two different sciences and they didn't want to mingle and come together. And he brought those two sciences together, different sides, and said, no, you can't separate the brain from the body. You just can't. It's one thing. And we have so many doctors that are like, oh, it's all about mental. Oh, it's all about physical. No. Go ahead.
No, you're talking about the book, The Body Keeps the Score, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that just continually talks, and Gabor Mate constantly says it too. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I hope I am. But
it sounds better than how I would say it, so that's fine.
So he constantly says you can't separate the brain from the body, because you can't. And that vagus nerve is the leading thing that goes to the core of both of them. And when you realize that your feelings are dealing and driving your body, it's mind-blowing. Like, it just changes so many things. And then when you realize your digestion is driving so much of your mental, it's a complete circle of what are we putting in our gut? And what is our gut doing to our brain? And what is our brain doing to our body? And it's all related. So that's why, there's so many somatic practices, like you can do yoga and you can do somatic healing. And I mean, there's all these things, but you have to combine them with the mental part of getting rid of your trauma as well. You can't just do the talk therapy, and you can't just do let's sing on stage or act. They've got to be combined, because you can't just take care of the body and you can't just take care of the brain. You have to take care of both of them. And when we don't, that's where the injuries come and the chronic everything. I mean, I've worked with clients where you start to heal their nervous system and all of a sudden they have no joint pain. All of a sudden diabetes are gone. All of a sudden they don't deal with depression. And all you're healing is their nervous system, because it's so interrelated. And then all of a sudden the weight drops. I can't tell you how many clients I have where they're like, oh, I have to drop the last 15 pounds. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I know why you're holding on to them. And then I start to deal with their trauma and their nervous system. And they're like, no, I just need different food. And I'm like, no, actually, your food's pretty decent. Because the people that come to me that are on the last 15 pounds are always the people that have already got their nutrition in place, but it's not working. And it's not working because they haven't dealt with their nervous system. They haven't dealt with their trauma. They haven't dealt with their processing their feelings. So once we start to do that, they'll call me and be like, oh my gosh, I just lost 3 pounds today. I'm like, oh, interesting. We just had a breakthrough yesterday. And that's our body holds that trauma in inflammation,
Oh yeah, we'll get into inflammation. So in terms of the nervous system, right? So I'm sat here now, and my back feels like it's in a mild state of electric shock, right?
right now.
Now yeah, that's my nervous system, right? What for the people out there? Because I think there's degrees, and I think you either start with your source of cortisol, or you start with what is the nervous system. But I think sometimes one affects the other. So let's start with the nervous system. What can people do to help regulate their nervous systems better? Because if you're in a hypertense state, it's very difficult to process, because you're already at a point of like, I feel like I'm on an edge. What can they do to begin to regulate their nervous system better? So my experience is, once you begin to regulate your nervous system better, these things come into focus a little better.
Yes, they do. That's not a short answer. Let me try because I teach this a lot, and it's like, First, just like we talked about, processing feelings. So I don't know, let's talk about the states. We have ventral, where we're in safety. If we look at it like a stoplight, we have green, which is ventral, which is safety. Then we have yellow, which is fight or flight. But we have to remember that fight or flight can be good and bad, right? Because fight or flight is mobilization. So a lot of people are in the fight or flight where the dinosaur is chasing you to eat you. That's the bad fight or flight. But we also have the fight or flight where we're mobilized to give the meeting at work or the presentation or go have a soccer match or go sing on stage. We need to be mobilized for that, but it's not a dinosaur eating us, okay? And then we have shutdown. We have dorsal, where we are literally numb. We are incoherent in a sense. We can't engage our prefrontal cortex. So our prefrontal cortex starts to diminish, or our access to our prefrontal cortex starts to diminish when we're in the fight or flight where the dinosaur is chasing us. It's still engaged when we're in the fight or flight of the preparing for a meeting or preparing to sing on stage. So the reason it's still engaged is because when we're in the fight or flight for the soccer match or the singing on stage, we are using our ventral and bringing safety and connection to the yellow, to the fight or flight. And that's what we want to do. So I teach my clients, it's really about surfing, right? A surfer doesn't want to have flat water of no emotion, right? No ups or downs. That's a boring surfing, right? We actually want to be able to surf our states of being just like a surfer does. So we're going to have highs where we catch the wave, but a surfer's happy. They're excited about that. Okay, so we're going to take that fight or flight and we're going to bring ventral to it and ride that wave. And then we're going to come down and we're going to, be calm a little bit. And then we're going to hit another one. Or maybe we have to dive under a wave. So maybe we're going to go into dorsal a little bit where we're grieving for something. But we're going to bring safety and connection of ventral to dorsal. And we're going to say, you know what? I'm grieving for the loss of my mom and I get this and this is hard and this is sad, but I'm not shutting down. And then when we rise up to yellow or fight or flight, that's a good thing. See, so many people don't understand. They think fight or flight is always bad. But if you've been down in dorsal or red for a long time, then coming up to yellow, fight or flight is actually a very good thing. And too often we shun ourselves and shame ourselves for being in fight or flight, when in reality, we've been in shutdown for so long that that's actually a great progress. And then we think as a society that we're supposed to be in green all the time, in ventral. And actually, that's very unhealthy. Those are the people that are just always happy, but they're lying to themselves. So they're not really happy. They're just showing that on the outside, right? So where we want to be is really in the waves of fight or flight. And so when we realize that, we can start to process the things around us as they're not bad. You see so many people, they get stuck in traffic and it's the worst thing in the world. They get so mad. Can you control that? No, you can't control that. So realize that you can't control it and turn on a podcast, turn on some music, text your wife or your husband and be like, I'm in the middle of traffic. And hopefully they have a regulated nervous system and they're like, okay, I've got the kids, I've got dinner going. You get here safely when you can. I think we as a society put so much stress because we want to control everything. And so one of the best tools to remain regulated is to realize that the only thing we can control is our response to things. That's it. That's all we can control. And our thoughts. We can control our thoughts and we can control our response to things. But even controlling our thoughts, I'm going to go a little bit. I know a lot of people love Tony Robbins. He's an amazing man. He has helped a lot of people. However, he doesn't understand trauma. And so when people come to his events or try and learn from him and it doesn't work, they feel like a failure. But here's what's going on. They're in dorsal. When you are in dorsal, which is shut down, which is the red of the light, you can't engage your prefrontal cortex. And it takes our prefrontal cortex to be able to think positively. So for those people that are going to Tony Robbins events or listening to him and being like, this doesn't work for me, I can't believe it. It's because they're so shut down, they can't engage their prefrontal cortex. And you have to engage your prefrontal cortex in order to start thinking positively. So we want to remain surfing, understanding those levels of where we can be, and that dipping down into red is okay, and dipping into green is great, and staying in yellow and surfing is fantastic. That way we can control our thoughts, which are, let's think positively. Instead of spiraling down into negative, worst case scenario, we want to spiral up into what's the best case scenario, right? And it takes engaging our prefrontal cortex. And it also takes, honestly, it takes self-love. Because if we don't love ourselves, we can't think positively. I like to say that it's like going into a store and you're going into your favorite aisle and what's something you want to shop for? What's on your Christmas?
Guitars, always guitars.
Always guitars. Okay, you're going in.
18 is not enough. I need 19. I almost bought one this afternoon, actually. I almost bought one this afternoon. I was like, no.
Okay, so you're going to the store and you're going to go down the aisle and you're looking for that perfect guitar, right? And you see it. And it's like light is coming down from the sky. It's like, this is the best.
It's a 1959 Les Paul. Yes.
Okay, you go. That's the guitar.
I even know the serial number. Carry on.
Not insane or anything.
No.
So you see this guitar and it's amazing, right? But all of a sudden your thoughts start coming up. Oh, you're not worthy of this. You're not good enough for this. Somebody else deserves this. Oh, it's too much money. You're never going to play it. You see all the negative thoughts that you're choosing? But instead, why don't we choose the things of, I'm totally worth this. I'm going to make this thing sound like the best it's ever sounded. This is so right up my alley. This is for me. I deserve this. I've put in the time and effort to learn the guitar. This is for me. But we don't choose those. Why don't we choose those thoughts? Because we don't love ourselves enough to think positively. And we've also been conditioned by society that we're not enough, or that we've been abandoned in some way, and that somebody else deserves that, not us. So we have to love ourselves enough, and we have to get out of dorsal so we can think positively and be like, you know what? Yeah. Because when you go to a store, you want the best. You're going to buy the best. You're not going to buy the rundown one. I mean, I know if you're an antique collector, that's totally different. But you're not going to buy the guitar with 2 strings on it and, a hole in the side of it and be like, oh, that's all I deserve. But we do that with our thoughts so often. We do that. We choose the thoughts of I'm not enough, or I'm going to be abandoned again, or I can't do this. In reality, we have the right to choose that guitar that the stars are all aligning for us to buy, right? But it's a choice of our thoughts. And that's what we have to do with positively thinking. I don't know where that.
No. So I'll tell you a story, and this came directly out of the conversation I had with you. So when I was a kid, when life got tough, I went into music, right? I lost myself in music, and my favorite band is probably Def Leppard, right?
In my alley.
I knew you would.
You never went all the way into that concert. I did.
Yeah. Pyromania, man.
Yes,
Wow.
Exactly.
So I remember when I was a young guy. I had to look after my nana, and I ended up living with her and when I was about 14, 15, but she died when I was about 15. And music was what got me through that, right? And I would sit up. I took some things from her house. One of them was a chair. She had this the 70s armchair that had orange and black flowers on it. It was ridiculously tacky. It was very, very 70s.
Very 70s.
Really bright orange and really dark black.
I know the colors, yes.
And she had a little record table. So I'd have all my records in there, and I would wait till everybody went to bed, and I would just sit up all night listening to LPs. And it was Def Leppard again, over and over and over and over. High and Dry. I mean, on through the night, I listened to quite a lot. It was High and Dry, Pyromania, Hysteria.
Yep. Loved it.
Over and over. They probably, there's a handful of bands that probably mean a lot to me. And I think Queen, one of them, but my father was a huge Queen fan. There's an English rock band called Thunder, who were almost as big as Guns N' Roses, actually. They were tipped to be. I'll send you a link to their first 2 albums.
Okay.
Amazing.
Oh, fun.
And you'll love them. You'll love them.
I love them.
And Def Leppard actually played with them in the mid-90s. That they opened for them in the UK. And there was Def Leppard, Metallica, probably Guns N' Roses. But Def Leppard, I was really like, because they were from the north of England. Their stories really one of the human triumph over tragedy, right? If anyone knows it. Very northern grit to just get through what they got through. Anyway, it was Hysteria's 30th anniversary tour. Now, I know that album inside out. You know, I used to be able to play almost every song that they wrote from their first album up till their 6th or 7th record. And it was the 30th anniversary in 2018. They come to play the UK, and I didn't go. Now, I was watching an interview with Joe Elliott the other day, the singer, and it was an interview taken from the year before the 30th anniversary, and he was talking about what they were going to do in the show. And I remember watching this interview, and for a minute I thought, I'm going to go and see that. And I thought, I can't, it's already been. And I was sitting thinking, well, why didn't I go? Because I've had all these things going round in my head since we last spoke. And I remember thinking, well, why didn't I go? And I got this really weird answer. The answer was because you don't allow yourself to have happiness. And I thought, that's weird. What the hell is that? What does that even mean? So then I thought about, what does it even mean you don't allow yourself to have happiness? And then it was like, oh, because life's disappointing enough, but at least this way I can control the disappointment. And I thought, I'm checking out of life because I'm afraid of being disappointed. And I thought, wow, okay, right, that's interesting.
When was the first?
Thought, right, I need to have a look at that. So I think there's a process where gradually, as things have become kind of tougher and tougher, but I also look back and go, well, actually, the reason they become tougher and tougher is because my nervous system's kind of knackered, and I get to a point where I stress out. But what I've done is I've disengaged. I mean, is it dorsal? Did you say?
Dorsal. That's the red part of light. But it would be back in the first, your root cause trauma was because that's your nervous system protecting you. That's your coping mechanism. Is obviously something happened to you where you were disappointed, and grief was given in a huge way, and your body couldn't cope with it. So your body's coping mechanism is, you know what? We're just not going to do anything that might be fun, because we can't bear that disappointment again.
Yeah, no, I'd absolutely agree. And I can see it. It's like, oh, yeah, there's things that happen at like family gatherings, and I step back. However, give me a microphone and a karaoke and I'm Freddie Mercury. It's probably because I can control that.
Yeah.
I know what that is. Yeah. That's safe. I know if I open my mouth, what's going to come out. I know how to engage a crowd. I can do those things. I know I can get away with it. But then there's other things where and I think it's this thing of like knowing what your feelings are. For a long time, it's just, I disengage. And people know it. You know, people have said it. Family members have said it. And you go, well, I disengage. What is that? And then if you think about it, this thing about knowing the feelings, it's like, what is that feeling? This is the instruction, the manual. Carburetor's broke. Why is it broke? And you go, well, what is it then? It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, it's fear. What is it a fear of? Hurt, disappointment, rejection. It's like all of these things, but that just stays as this amorphous thing in the stomach. Comes back to the stress thing, right? It stays as this amorphous, undefined blob of whatever until you actually examine it and go, well, what is that and why is that?
Well, there's two vibrations that everything in the universe goes off of: fear and love. And that was the changing thing for me, is when I started to self-love myself, I started to realize how many times I was making decisions out of fear. And I've thus said, I'm never making a decision out of fear again. So if I have a decision to make and the only path my brain is taking is negative or spiraling down into, worst case scenario, until I can get a grip and say, here's the best case scenario, or here's what it looks like if I make the decision from love, and here's what it looks like if I make the decision from fear. I don't make that decision anymore until I can make it from love. And I'll sit a couple days on something being like, show me, universe, what do I need to see? And that's been my biggest thing, because our brain always wants to be right. So it will find evidence for the answer that we tell it. This is the worst thing in the world. Oh, it's going to find evidence for that.
Confirmation bias.
Totally. Yeah. But if we ask it, what do I need to know to make this decision out of love? You're going to find that information. Your brain wants to find the answer. That's its job. So ask it the right questions. And then I make decisions for things in my life based on love, not fear, and it changes everything.
Yeah. So next time Def Leppard come, we'll go see them.
Definitely. We definitely need it.
So, oh man, I think I forgot how much I do love that band. That second record, High and Dry, I think it's one of the most underrated hard rock records of the early years. It's brilliant. But Pyromania, man, I didn't realize. So, well, a slight side arc, because I have to talk about this with somebody, and you're a total 80s chick, so I didn't realize that Pyromania started the whole thing. That the 80s was crap till that record came out. Like, but between Def Leppard and George Michael, they invented the 80s, you know?
Seriously.
It was just like it didn't exist. The big, and I remember the first time I heard Rock of Ages. You know, there's two things I remember. The first time I heard Bohemian Rhapsody, and my first thought was, what planet did this come from?
What drugs were they on when they...
Yeah. I was about 2.5, and I remember thinking, whoa. And until I was about 10, I literally thought Freddie Mercury was from a different planet. And I remember where I was when I heard Rock of Ages of Pyromania. And I've been in love with the electric guitar ever since. That was it. It was just like, that's it. So, no, it was interesting. So, the nervous system's important, but let's talk about the effect that, cortisol. Cortisol's weird. Cortisol is a strange fat. Like, you can be skinny everywhere and have 50 pounds around your stomach.
Yep, because there's so many cortisol receptors right around.
And it's the strength, like, even, and it has weird effects on people. It's essentially a fight or flight hormone, right?
Yes.
So it's like if you're in starvation, your body, this is what they think, your body produces cortisol because it basically doesn't allow you to digest food. It stores food, but it's a weird fat. It's not like Butterball.
No.
Right?
And this is where your fitness and nutrition coaches that are, not into any of this are going to say, oh, you're just eating too much. Move more. You're like, they don't understand that when you tell a 40-year-old woman to go do HIIT more, she's actually putting her body into more stress.
Which produces more cortisol, which burns it out even faster. Because if the root cause of cortisol is an overstressed immune system, an overstressed nervous system, then all you're doing is like, because I know when I tried HIIT, I lasted about 2 weeks and I was dead. It took me about 6 weeks to recover. Just completely, it was just too much far. Like, I couldn't do it. And this is the other thing, like, if you're highly stressed and you're going to go and do, hugely intense workouts, they're just going to knock you. You've got to build.
You have to build. It's why I don't like CrossFit. I've been an athlete my whole life. I've done elite level sports. I've done intense sports. I've done everything. But I did CrossFit for 3 weeks and I got injured worse than I've ever gotten injured before, because it plays off of that athletic mindset of you've got to be the best and you have to do anything that you can to be the best. So you drop form, you drop having that mind-muscle connection, you drop everything that protects your body to be able to be the best at lifting 100 pounds over your head 200 times, right? It's just stupid. So I tell people, if you're older than 30, don't do CrossFit. My chiropractor would totally agree. He's like, CrossFit has kept me in practice. Because, again, it's the body being overly stressed all the time. CrossFit is a very stressful sport because of the mental state that it's constantly asking you to be in. It's, powerlifting, people would say, oh, powerlifting's more because you're putting more on your body. Yes, but you're in a controlled mental state, and that makes all the difference. Bodybuilding for physique-wise, to stand on stage. Again, you're in a controlled mental state. CrossFit, you're not in a controlled mental state at all. And that's the difference. Uh-oh, we froze.
Yeah. So how I've arrived at this point about cortisol is I eat pretty well, right? So I eat largely the carnivore diet.
Okay.
Very almost zero processed foods. I'll eat steak. I have a steak and eggs and sausage and things, lamb for breakfast. And
Awesome.
sometimes I'll eat again, I have bacon. I have very little bread. I have very little carbs, very little sugar. And I've been eating, before that it was keto. So since about 2019 to 2021, I was keto. And since 2021 now I've been carnivore. I have what would be classed as an incredibly clean diet, but still I produce cortisol. That now I dropped about 40 or 50 pounds initially. But I still have this fluctuation of literally around about 15, 20 pounds, goes up and down, up and down. And that's when I began to realize, okay, there's another layer. Food is one layer. The food can produce cortisol. Something else must be producing cortisol as well. And this is where I come to you. And this is where you get the stress. This is where you get there is another layer underneath that you have to tackle.
How often are you living in the dinosaur is chasing me is the end of story. And can you bring safety and connection to that dinosaur? You know, can we sort of say, oh, but I've got a cave right here that I can hide in? Because if that dinosaur, I've been in the world where when my hormones were so messed up and I couldn't digest food and my hair was falling out and I didn't know anything about this stuff, you know, this was 20 years ago, and had 3 little kids and didn't know anything about life or anything, and in a bad marriage. And the doctor's like, oh, you need anxiety medicine. I'm like, no, I don't need anxiety medicine. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. But they're like, well, do you have a stressful life? And I just sort of laughed at them. I'm like, I'm raising 3 kids alone pretty much and dealing with a depressed husband. Yeah, a little stress. Well, you need to stop it. How often do we hear the doctor? Well, you need to de-stress, right? You go to a coach, you need to de-stress, and you just want to slap the person. That's stopping me. So I like to say that it's not about taking everything out of your life that's stressing you out, because work stresses us out, and our relationships stress us out, and our family stresses us out. It's about thinking positively. They've done studies where they see people's nervous systems with the change of 2 words. I have to, I get to. The change of that word changes our nervous system. As soon as we say I have to, we go into the dinosaurs chasing us. As soon as we say I get to, dinosaur's not chasing us. So that's what I teach a lot of times is we can still be in fight or flight, but I get to is the fight or flight of the soccer match. I have to is the fight or flight of the dinosaur. And those 2 things change everything in your nervous system, everything. So when you have to go to pick up your kids, well, can we change that? Can we reframe that? Guess what? You don't have to. You could leave them. And people are like, no, I can't. I have to. And I'm like, but just wait. Let's branch out a little bit more. Do you have kids? Yes. Is that a luxury? No, they're a pain. They cost so much money. Okay, back up. Does everybody have kids? No. So is it a luxury to have kids? Yes. Are your kids going to school? Oh, what a luxury. They get to learn. Well, what a luxury. You get to go have a job. Oh, so in other words, you get to pick them up after school so that you get to see them, so that you get to spend time with them, so that you get to understand you're a parent. That's a luxury that other people don't ever have. So we need to start seeing things as the benefit and the beauty that they are. And we're so stressed with life, we miss the forest for the trees. And again, that goes back to being present. When you're picking up your kids, are you thinking about a million things from work? Are you thinking about what you have to do when you get home? Are you thinking about dinner? Are you thinking, yes, we are. Stop it. Just stop it. And think about that kid is in the back seat and you get 10 minutes with them to make a difference with them right then and there. And maybe it just means you listen to them and they're seen and heard. Because the number one thing that humanity wants, I don't care where you are, who you are, anything you are, we all want one thing. It's funny, when I put this post up, people are like, air? And I'm like, no, validation. We want to be seen and heard. And that goes into being loved.
Yeah.
But when we aren't given that, we will do whatever we can to get that. So first we have to love ourselves. Because as soon as we love ourselves, we can see and hear others for who they are. Like you were talking about compassion. When we can validate ourselves and love ourselves, we come to a level of absolute understanding and compassion for people. So get in that car, love yourself enough to be present with those kids and see and hear them. And guess what? You get to pick them up. And it's kind of what we need to do for everything. That Christmas party that's coming up for everybody, where they have to go to it. Guess what? The more you tell your nervous system that, that cortisol is just shooting through your body. And then you're going to go put cheesecake and wine and beer and spirits on top of that cortisol. Oh, forget it. You're storing it all. But I get to go to this holiday party and I get to see, I don't care if it's only one person, I get to see them for 5 minutes. Or I get to taste Susie's cheesecake. Or even if I tell a client, you know what? So say to yourself, I get to go for 1 hour. Instead of saying I have to go to a holiday party, tell your brain, I get to go for 1 hour. Instead of I have to go for 3 hours, some way, somehow, get your body and your nervous system on board that you get to go do this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That changes everything.
Yeah, it's I think the Chinese have an expression called the mind changes the environment.
Oh, it does. Yes.
The minute you change the origin of the thought and the reason why, then you change the task itself pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's quite... So, all right, let's talk about something that you're clearly very good at, which is bodybuilding and muscle. Right?
Okay.
So there's a couple of things here. One is that sarcopenia, right? Getting old. Sarcopenia is kind of now being linked in with the third wave of diabetes, which is Alzheimer's, right? So Alzheimer's is now going to be recognized as diabetes type 3. And sarcopenia has been shown that the more muscle you have, the less likelihood this is to happen. There's something about the muscular skeleton of the body and having as much muscle as in your body as you possibly can. And there's also something about having big, strong thighs and glutes, right? Now, when I was a kid, I'd hear the older women say, marry a woman with strong legs, right? I never got it. I was like, what are you on about? And I'd say, as I've got healthier and I've got kind of a better and better testosterone level, I get it. I totally get it. I can't put it into words, but I totally get it.
Interesting.
And it's got something to do with dependability. I can't quite explain it, but it's like, yeah, I could, like, you see a woman with strong legs, and you just go, yeah, I could rely, yeah, they're trustworthy. I could rely on them.
Interesting.
Something, it's so deep, it's so primal that I can't understand it. But I understand, going back, there's something about the correlation between having, and I think this is why the diabetes that runs throughout my family didn't affect me when I was young, because I did so much weightlifting on my legs, and I cycled easily up to 10 miles a day till I was about 26, 27, and someone stole my bike, right? My thighs were bigger than most girls' waists, right?
Wow.
I had like 28 to 30 inch thighs. I had like 22-inch calves. They're still about 18 inches now.
Oh, I can.
So I was literally just and I think that's why the diabetes didn't hit. And it only began to kick in as I got into my 30s and I started to lose that muscle tone. So there's something about the musculature of the body that it's like loving yourself is to develop that. That's a form of self-love, right? Giving your body that. Do you want to talk about your experience with that?
With aging and what?
Yeah. I mean, all of it, just like the difference it makes. Because your physique's insane. Even my wife was like, wow, look at her. I was like, yeah, it's insane.
Because I grew up as an elite level athlete being told that I was fat by my brothers and my dad. And thunder thighs was a very mean term. So that is part of my sense.
Oh, the thigh gap is evil. The thigh gap is evil, I'm telling you.
It's been a rough road of, learning to appreciate my legs. It's been funny. So yeah, I mean, I would say I was an athlete as a 4. I was a gymnast and a swimmer at 4. elite level by the time I was 10. So muscle has always been a thing for me as far as just what I've had and what I've always done. I never knew any different. So I don't really know a time when I was like, wow, I could really use some more muscle on my body. I can go back to when I had kids and I was trying to stay under 110 pounds, because I wanted to look thin. I wanted to look good. And that was the era of Victoria's Secret models. There was,
How tall are you?
I'm 5'3". That's it.
Okay. So 110 big. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you're any taller than that,
Well,
my word.
15 is like, what you should be, right? And so I tried.
That's about 8 stone in English money.
Okay. So when I started to bodybuild, it was wild because I started to put muscle on and actually look better. And it's because our muscle holds everything in. That's why this whole Ozempic thing is horrible. Horrible. Because people are losing weight, but they think they're losing fat. And they do lose some fat with
stripping muscle, isn't it?
Stripping muscle. And people are like, but I never had biceps. I never had abs. I never had quads. And I'm like, no, it's not stripping that muscle. It's literally stripping the muscle that is holding everything together. Our lean muscle mass is the muscle nobody really thinks about or sees. And so I had a client come on and they're like, why does my skin, I lost all this weight. And before I didn't have the flabbiness. And I'm like, yeah, because you literally ate away at all of your lean muscle mass. And yeah, muscle holds everything together. In fact, this is a big thing when people are like, oh, I want to go on that 6-8 week diet. And I'm like, no, because most people end up at the end of a 6 to 8 week diet in worse health. So how is that possible? Well, they starve themselves. And when you starve yourself, your body has to get energy from somewhere. Well, what's the easiest energy to get? It's not our fat, it's our muscle. So it eats our muscle away for those 6 to 8 weeks. And then at the end of it, you have a worse body composition than you did before you started. But you think you're lighter because you've lost weight. So you're happy. So you go back to your way of eating. And then your body is very primed to gain tons of fat because it has no muscle. And so now you're in an even worse situation because you gain the weight back, but you gain it all in fat instead of muscle. And you do this 5 or 6 times, and you are where most of society is today. And we're just in this fast-paced society of we don't want to pay attention or take the time to have things go slow. And honestly, that's what I teach my clients to do is you got to take it slow. But most people don't want to put the time in. And if you do it slow, you can actually gain muscle while you're losing fat. The problem is that most people go by what the scale says. And if you're gaining muscle while you lose fat, scale doesn't always tell you, right? And then they get frustrated. But yeah, muscle, you see these people who are 80, 90 years old in other countries. For me, I mean, a lot of them are in Europe for some reason. You guys all know what you're doing. And they're 80, 90 years old and they're doing sports. They're running. They're doing more stuff than most 20-year-olds in America are doing. And they're smiling and they're healthy and they're happy and they have a purpose. And I mean, there's a 90-year-old woman in Germany that does gymnastics. It's incredible. So yeah, if you want to age well, you need to have muscle on your body. And that's why people will tell you all the time, there's no late date to start lifting weights. It's never too late. People are like, oh, I'm 50 or I'm 60. It's too late. No. One of the best bodybuilders out there is an 80-year-old Black woman who looks incredible.
I think I know the lady you mean.
She started lifting when she was 72. It's like, what?
Yeah.
My girls always show. They're like, Mom, this is going to be you. Probably will. So, yeah, but muscle is everything. It creates, when my clients start to gain muscle on their body, again, they start to have more energy. They start to feel better. And then that muscle holds everything in. So I have pictures from when I was cutting down for stage, and I literally changed only 2 pounds. 2 pounds. That's it. But the pictures are night and day. Because that's what the potential of muscle is, to change what our body looks like.
I would say with yourself, that you have the maximum amount of muscle you could probably get on your body. Like I'm not kidding, it's packed. So that when you actually do drop that 2 pounds. Like a lot of the girls, if you go by the bikini, off season, they're not carrying as much muscle as you are all year round.
No, yeah.
So that what they're dropping is masses of water and body weight. And then they're tiny. They are tiny when they hit the stage. And they look like they've got AIDS. They look horrendous. And you've never looked like that in your competition photos. You always look normal.
Oh,
That's the difference. So, and I think it's because the level of musculature you have is huge without it being over the top or grotesque. It's like the maximal amount of muscle you could get whilst being normal.
I guess I can chalk that up to my German.
Well, look, there's something to the good genes, the Germanic genes. I mean, even Caesar, there's something in that, right?
Yeah.
It just works. I think Arnold, and even pre-anabolics, Arnold was a bit of a specimen.
Yeah.
And even the German soldiers in the war were just huge, were just really fit. So there's obviously something there that kind of helps. But I think
never was my genetics, because my parents and grandparents, you don't want to see them. But
they become Americanized.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's something about daily life. So I bought things to me have to have a function. Like I couldn't get it into running unless I had to run somewhere, right?
Right.
Everything has to have a function to me or a struggle. So I struggle to maintain the gym because it doesn't have a purpose. But I bought a wood burner, so I have to chop logs.
There you go.
And that's the way I can. Everything has to have, I bought a dog, so I had to walk. It has to incorporate into the functionality of my daily life, or I struggle to maintain it.
But that's not a bad thing. That's actually a very good thing. I mean, because you will keep that up. If it's all about the gym and going to the gym, you take that person out of that environment, then what do? Then they're lost. You're not lost. You will find something to keep yourself moving. So that's a good thing to have.
Yeah, because I think half of my family, well, my father's side, something. My great grandfather was he was a steel erector, and he built some of the biggest bridges in England. But he also worked on the British space program until the Americans paid us to stop it. And my father was a carpenter. And my mother's side of the family, they were all steel workers. They used to make the steel that my other grandfather built with. So they were busy Irish navvies. So give me holes to dig and I'm happy. I'll give me things to break with a hammer and I'm happy. I'll smash it all day long. I love it.
Delicious.
But going to the gym bores me. It's like I struggle. It's got to have a practical application. But I think men in general we have to get back, because the testosterone crisis is real. And I think you just have to look at English politics to see that the testosterone crisis is real. England is in the state it's in because of a testosterone crisis, because the actions that people have taken in England would not have got past the door 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Certainly not when my grandfather was alive.
When real men, yeah. I'm going to say that for me too. It's so hard to find a real man anywhere. Yeah.
I mean, I was lucky. I saw the town I grew up with in the 70s and 80s was like growing up in the 50s. Very old-fashioned. It was a very devoutly religious community. It was beautiful. We had a convent and a church that was in the heart of everything. We'd see the nuns out in the shops and all this sort of thing. It was the most incredible experience. And for as much as there's a very bad side to religion that people have experienced, I experienced probably the most idyllic thing you could ever imagine. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. Very, very beautiful, very privileged. Literal miracles and all sorts of things would happen. It was just incredible. But I seen these old-fashioned men. I was lucky to sort of grow up, and these were men who worked with steel for a living. So they were huge, huge men. And they would get up when a woman walked in a room. They would take off their hat. They wouldn't swear in front of a woman. They wouldn't smoke in front of a woman. If you swore in front of a woman, you were told, and if you didn't listen, you were taken outside and sorted out. If you were a philanderer, you were dealt with incredibly harshly. If you were a criminal, you were driven out of town once your legs had healed. And this is true. I know people this happened to. And this is kind of the world I grew up in.
Wow.
And you see that, and you see what's happening now, and you go, there's a lot changed. And I think the testosterone crisis is real. And lifting for men, because I know you've spoke a lot about, I don't know how much longer we can talk for. I know you spoke a lot about hormonal therapy for women, but I think for men it's important as well, because the average 20-year-old now doesn't have the same testosterone that my grandfather had 60 years ago.
You wouldn't put a guy under 30 on it, though, would you?
No, because you're going to then burn out your natural receptors. You've got to get to what I call as the male menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't realize that men do have a menopause.
They do.
And it is this dropping off of testosterone. And
job,
I think
that too. Any kind of law enforcement or military, huge levels of stress. Cortisol goes up, so testosterone comes down. Yeah.
So I think as guys, we have to take these things seriously. We have to look into this. We have to build the muscle skeleton, either through just daily activity. But the muscle skeleton creates testosterone. A healthy muscle skeleton will create more testosterone. I think we need to eat it. Like, if you're not eating beef and beef tallow, then you have to really begin thinking about eating beef, particularly grass-fed in the States. Most of it's grass-fed in the UK. You have to come to England. Our meat is amazing. There's a reason there's a reason English food is simple. It's because the meat is exceptional.
Yum.
It just tastes amazing.
I can't tell you how many people will meet me and they're like, "Oh, you must eat a lot of salads." I'm like, no, I eat a lot of meat.
I don't eat any veg. So I try and avoid it as much as possible. Yeah, I think this is it's really important. Getting down to these, it's like this thing of self-perfection. This is how I've arrived at this point. I wasn't someone who went, "Oh, I've got trauma. There's things wrong with me." This kind of evolved over like perfecting issues. And then at some point the door cracks open and you go, "Oh, hang on, there's more wrong than I thought, and I need to fix this, and this is having this effect and this effect. If it's affecting me, it's got to be affecting other people I know too." And it's kind of how I found yourself. So yes, lift. We have to lift.
Resistance. It doesn't have to be heavy. That's been debated for so long, but they have done study upon study that lifting light, as long as you go to failure, you're fine. So if you enjoy lifting 40 reps of something super light, go for it. It takes more time, but if you enjoy it more, go for it.
I get bored. I'd rather lift 5. Yeah. I'd rather lift 5 to 8 of something heavy than 40 reps. I can't. My mind's just like, I don't see the point.
What's crazy is Andrew Tate, and I don't care what we think because I don't think much of him, but Andrew Tate, I just saw a post by him. He lifts, his biceps are what they are because he lifts 5 pounds 300 to 600 times a day. He does it while he's doing, his work. And I'm like, well,
that's the Chris Hemsworth thing, though, isn't it? Chris Hemsworth used occlusion, didn't he? He used occlusion bands and lifted really light, so that was trapping more blood in the muscle. But then the way I look at it, so I got down to the lowest weight I think I'd been in about 20 years at the start of this year, and I felt too light. And how I gauged it was, I don't think I can knock somebody out. It was literally it.
That's a good gauge.
It was like, I don't think I've got enough body weight to actually have to intervene in a situation if I had to. I felt far too light. I allowed myself, I allowed myself to put on more weight. I put on more than I thought, but I allowed myself to put on more weight because I just felt, and I thought, right, I'm going to put the weight on and I'm just going to create more opportunities for muscle building within my daily routine.
Or chop wood.
All right, here's a question for you then. So, in the morning, I'm dead.
Interesting.
Nothing, right? I need I don't know if I'm over caffeinated from the day before, but I don't really drink caffeine past midday. If you and I had a conversation at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, and you said, in the morning, David, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't remember that we'd had that conversation until about 11 a.m. And I would also be completely wiped out for about 2 hours after getting up in the morning.
So my first question.
Now, I sleep terribly.
Well,
so what would you make of that?
Well, I would ask, when did it start where you sort of disassociate from your evening? We'd want to go back into what part of your life was nighttime unsafe or was morning unsafe. One of those two things has happened most likely in your life where morning or evening were very unsafe for you. The reason I can say this is when I was going through getting my trauma certification, we were talking about this, and there was a woman who had been, this is going to be trigger for somebody, so heads up, who had been gang raped by her dad's religious buddies for 2 years, every 2 or 3 times a week. And she literally shut down as of 5 o'clock in the evening. Shut down. Didn't remember a thing. And wouldn't remember a thing until 10 or 11 in the morning. So we were talking about this, and we were talking about different people in different situations and how we disassociate from things and how our body has coping mechanisms. So yeah, I would say that I'm wondering, first off, and it doesn't have to be as horrible as that. Obviously, trauma is not something where we're like, oh, that's a 10, that's a 2. No, trauma doesn't work that way because we all have different capacities for trauma. We all have different histories. We all have different everything. So we can't compare trauma. So it could be something as simple as your parents argued every night. And so you as a child shut down and disassociated, and it wasn't calm until a certain time in the morning. That could be a situation, that could be an issue. It could be something completely different. It could be that you worked at a job and you came home and it was just, that's when you overthought. And so thinking was unsafe for you then. We would want to go back to something where was there a time when nighttime or morning time was unsafe for you?
I would never, ever have thought, I'm going to go away and think about that. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Because it is, it's like it'll be midday and I'll think, oh, I haven't done this, and I haven't done this, and I haven't done this, and I haven't done this. But everything from the night before is just gone. Doesn't exist.
For instance, I have a client who is a volunteer EMT. And he has been talking to me and he's like, Wendy, I can't get regulated. The last 3 weeks have been absolutely horrible as far as getting regulated. And we finally started to talk about what was going on. He's like, he was getting 8 and 9 calls in the night. And it was so not normal. And he was getting it 4 and 5 times a week. And we're like, yeah, this is what's going on, is even on the nights when you don't get calls, your body is nervous and anticipating a call. So you're not sleeping. So because he's only volunteer, he had to tell the guys, hey, for the next 2 months, I'm turning my phone off as of 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, that's interesting. So I've had insomnia since 2014.
Mm-hmm. So what happened in 2014?
My daughter was born. She didn't sleep. And I did the nights for 18 months.
Nights. So your body is still coping with the, I have to be on alert for my daughter so she doesn't die.
Bloody hell. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that. There was a 6-month period where it eased off, and then no.
Yeah.
And insomnia is terrible. You go in these cycles. It's horrible. You go in a cycle. It could be anything. It's got you into that cycle when you're in it. It's like it's found its groove again. It's like, oh, we're back. We're back to our happy place. And you just go round and round. But that wipes you out. That destroys your muscle mass. I lost so much. I lost almost all my muscle mass through that period.
So how's your daughter doing now?
It's great.
Great. Okay. No.
Yeah. Once we switched that milk, she was fine. But I've never slept really since.
Okay. Well, so you need to go in and deal with these emotions and tell 2014 David that he can take a back seat, that he doesn't need to be the center of everything right now.
That's another interesting thing, the thing of the inner child. That's interesting. when my nervous system reached like a complete overload, I experienced that. I was basically 9 years old, 14 years old, in the age I am now, every day for 3 months. And it was like, and it is, and it's like, I know it gets hippified, that phrase really does get hippified
It does.
a lot by the new age community and stuff. And it's like, well, no, there's actually something to that, because I literally experienced points where my body had gone into a total freeze, and it was still there. And it was still there. It was still there at that age. It was still there at that age. And then I'm the age I am now, watching these other ages. And it was like living, I spent 3 months living as my 9-year-old self, my 14-year-old self, and my adult self now, every day. But I was aware of what it was. So I was able to be like an observer.
Yes.
It was a very Jungian experience. If you've ever read Carl Jung and his work in his Red Book, it was very much like that, of just observing myself and going, wow, this is really bizarre, but I'm really privileged to be able to observe this with full clarity.
Yeah.
Like I knew what was happening.
I
I just observed it and made a lot of mental notes about what it was. So yeah, there is something. I'm going to go away and think about that. I knew there was a reason I met you.
But yeah, think about, and then here's the thing: be grateful for that 2014 David. Don't punish him, because he was keeping you safe.
Yeah. Look, I don't think it's. Maybe there is a bit of that, or maybe I need to think about it a lot more. I mean, I got to watch Mary Poppins a lot, because that's what she used to love to watch. So,
well, we should.
But yeah,
When we find out things, we shame ourselves for being wrong or not knowing something or not being in the right time. That's where that self-love comes in. We have to love ourselves and be grateful, because that 2014 David kept you present for your daughter. But we don't want to shame him, because if we shame him, we kick him out of the car and we tell him he's no good. But he's made you.
Yeah, it's like you develop the coping mechanism, and then there's a point where you have to let it go.
Yeah.
You just have to say, okay, right, thank you very much. Oh, you can take a back seat. Yeah, no, all right, yeah, okay. Right, we've been on longer than we thought.
I know, I probably got.
I mean, we haven't even touched on America. Yes.
Well, America isn't really back to America yet, so maybe we should do that when we the glory starts.
Yes, lift more weights. It makes you vote for Trump. Which is true. Hey, look, the studies that you lift weights, you become super conservative, super quick.
Well, because here's my thing with that: people have thrown that around. People in the gym are conservative because they have to work for something.
Well, it's also the testosterone makes you conservative.
But liberals don't work for anything. They just tear down other people's stuff. So there's no way a liberal's going to walk in the gym and put in that effort. And
they drink soy lattes and wine.
Soy boys. I call them soy boys. Oh, gosh. Yes, it's
for a reason.
Absolute joy.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think we meant to be on this long. And I know you've got a busy work life. So, listen, thank you very much for your time. We'll have to get you back on. We'll talk about America.
Hey.
I'd love to talk about what the last 4 years have been like. Because I think
from those.
Well, I've watched from up here as America burned, but I think England's going to dip into this, right? So I think we have that. I don't think it'll be as long. I don't think Trump will allow it to be as long.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Because he loves Great Britain. Technically, he's kind of half British, so he could be our king or president if he wanted. I don't think anybody will object. So, yeah. Look, he's got 4 years, maybe eight. I've said this. I'm going to say it again. I think there could be another term there. I think it could be that bad. They might wing it for him. So we'll have to see. But definitely, let's get you back on, and we'll talk about America. Okay. Yeah, I could talk to you for hours and hours. Honestly, it's wonderful. You've been fantastic. You look radiant. I'm not going to ask how old you are, because it's rude, but I know you look fantastic for the age that you are.
Kind of it. I'm almost 50.
Wow. Yeah.
3 months.
There you go.
Be 50.
See.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, look, I think it's a testament of like what can be achieved if you look after yourself properly.
And it's not expensive either. It's funny because I have a business partner who's in California, and he'll talk about all the stuff they're doing, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that these people are doing. And I don't mean to toot my own horn, but it has a purpose. I'll sit in that room with them, and I'm the oldest, and I look the youngest, and I haven't put the money into it. And so I say that because you know, a lot of people like, oh, only Hollywood stars and all the stuff that they do. No, it really is as simple as nutrition, movement, and recovery. It really is.
Eat meat, lift, and rest,
There you go.
basically.
Drink some.
But it's all the what do they call them? It's all the ponytail lifts that cost the money.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it is. So yes. Anyway, absolutely wonderful, Wendy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I
It's been
appreciate
a
it.
pleasure.
Thank you for having
Yes, I'll speak to you next time.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.